Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for also being patient with me while I get this resolved. So welcome to our talk about XML sitemap organizations for large sites, a case study. My name is Jeremy Chinquist. I'm a project manager at Drurnomics, as well as very involved in Drupal Austria. My colleague Leopold Novelli is also very active in the community as he does his radio show in his native language, Slovenian. So, as this is a use case, we will just show off what we were doing for our clients. Basically, over the last few years, we have had feedback from several of our clients that they need support on SEO and sitemap indexing, to be specific. We have also spoken to our clients, Die Wirtschaftsverlag. They're a publishing house here in Vienna, Austria, and they have a range of websites that we help them on, including the Handwerk and Bau website. So our study will look at that. The current, Leo, we can hear you typing, by the way. So the website itself was actually having a single sitemap, a single XML sitemap. This file had about 5,000 URLs in it, and many of the URLs were being shown, they were not being processed for days at a time. When we looked into it a little bit on sitemaps.org, we found out quickly that by providing the last modification timestamp, you enable search engine crawlers to retrieve only a subset of the sitemaps in the index. And the crawler may only retrieve sitemaps that were modified since a certain date. This incremental sitemap fetching mechanism allows for the rapid discovery of new URLs on very large sites. So from this, we also started to make a mock-up. It looked something like this, where we were able to break up the content into multiple sitemap index files, and we grouped the files logically. So we decided quickly on that the publish date, the publish month would be relevant to our structure. We did further research. At the end of this document, you have a full bibliography, and so therefore, please do take a look at the end of the slides. Once again, they will be shared publicly. We also looked at other case studies and references to sitemap structure on other websites and in other sources. We quickly produced a very short list of changes that we wanted to make, break apart the sitemap files into small groups, group logically. We wanted to also create multiple sitemap index files. This was important as well for reporting purposes. The last thing and the most important from sitemap.org was to optimize the use of our last mod. And in short, to date, we have achieved all but this last goal. So analysis of this change will have to come in a future presentation. So requirements, the Drupal specific solution that we had, it was required to break apart content, thinking in terms of node type as well. It had to have some logic for sorting as well as logic for grouping. And we had to keep intact the features that we already had, which were auto-generating the sitemap, breaking it apart after 50,000 items, all of the things that a sitemap XML file is required to do. At this point, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Leo.
So when we were looking at the concept, how to achieve our goal, we waited on three options. Use one of two existing contrib modules, simple XML sitemap or XML sitemap, or write a completely custom solution. And by inspecting complexity of both of the contrib modules, it quickly became clear to rule out the third option. it wouldn't make sense writing something from scratch when a solution already exists. On further investigation, we inclined towards simple XML-sitemap module, and there were two reasons for that. First was that it provided a nicer documentation on how to extend it to create custom sitemap types. Those are actually called variants. And we already had a module in place which allowed creating one custom sitemap index. Yeah, let's scroll down to see the implemented solution. So we developed our in-house simple sitemap extension module, which is now available at Drupal.org. It provides custom sitemap indexes and sitemaps dynamically grouped by month in which the item is published. To allow custom grouping of items in sitemaps, we had to override the core component of simple XML sitemap module, its query worker, and its controller. Those overrides allowed us to define dynamic sitemap types that are using generators that are able to group sitemap items together via specified parameters. I dived into code details here a bit. Let me briefly explain. Simple XML sitemap module defines three plugin types: variants, that are actually called sitemap types, sitemap generators, and URL generators. And we created dynamic plugins of those types to accomplish our goal. And yeah, that's how much I'd like to dive into the detail here. Now I'd like to show what our solution has to offer and how do we set it up.
I should have stopped sharing. No.
So can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, very well.
Okay. So yeah, firstly, we have to define our sitemap variants, which is done under simple XML sitemap configuration. Variants. So that's my local environment. So here we defined sitemap variants, and you can see there is one of type extended entity called general, one of monthly dynamic type. That one is grouping articles by month. This extended entity includes all of the content that is not of type article, and then there's an index that joins those two together. And simple sitemap extensions allows us to include sitemap variants in the index. So in the Handwerk-und-Bau sitemap index are two sitemap variants, the general one and the monthly articles. After we have those things configured, we also have to add content types to the sitemap variants. So I don't know, we click on a content type, and on its configuration, we have to set to which sitemap variants, in which sitemap variants it will show up. So article is not part of general sitemap, but it's part of monthly articles. Yeah, and once we have these things configured, we can get sitemaps. So this is for Handwerk-und-Bau. Here's a list of general sitemap, and then there are sitemaps for a group of articles grouped by month. So yeah, if we check out each of these, so this is like one random month that I picked. There are 2 articles in this group, and yeah, this is the general sitemap. So all non-article content. And from here, I'm gonna pass it back to Jeremy.
So
I'm gonna stop sharing.
I still see your screen.
Are you sure?
Now I've started sharing. Okay. Leo, does my screen show correctly now?
Yes.
Okay. So Google Search Console will actually show us what we want to see. We can see that over the past 2 months that the Search Console is listing our individual sitemap index files. As you can see from the screenshot taken a couple of days ago, the date of which each individual sitemap index file was crawled is listed, and we are achieving our goal that it's consistently crawling sitemaps that we wanted to crawl. The frequency is good. The only thing that we need to improve on yet is the last mod timestamp so that we can be certain that the newest sitemap index files are being crawled consistently. I was given permission from the Wirtschaftsverlag to actually publish this data, which thank you very much to them. I can show that the listed URLs are actually being indexed correctly. So we can see over the past few weeks as well that this is consistent, that the index is at 98.61%. And so we are achieving our goal as well, that the changes to the sitemap structure are actually causing the content to be indexed properly. In conclusion, basically what I've listed just before, as well as the roadmap, so I will hand it back to Leo.
Yeah, there are a few things left to do on the code base. First and foremost, we have to fix last modification date of sitemap index file entry in the main sitemap index file. As you were able to see, all the sitemaps and groups are regenerated daily, and we'd like to at least retain the date when the last item in the sitemap group was modified. Secondly, we have to move the sitemap link sorting logic into the simple sitemap extensions module. This is currently still done on the website custom module itself. And lastly, we have to make simple sitemap extensions compatible with the newest version of simple XML-sitemap. That's the version 4.x, which utilizes entity API for sitemap types. And hopefully with that, first point will be easily achievable.
Yeah, so as I promised, the references are at the end of the slides. They will be available. I will post that link again. For the last few minutes that we have, we can definitely go to any questions that people have.
Yeah, I've already answered one in the Q&A. And the question was if the site is multilingual. And yeah.
In this case, no. But Leo, why don't you also teaser the other thing that you talked about, you wanted to talk about with the content pool?
Yeah, so the problem here that we had to address was that we have like one bigger site where journalists are inputting all of the content, and then there are separated front ends that connect to the same content pool but need only part of the content. And so the sitemaps also have to be only partially generated. So yeah, that's also one thing that the simple sitemap extensions module is solving for us, because we can have different sitemap indexes for each of the subsite. And Handwerk.bau is one of such websites.
There was another question that was asked about one problem that a lot of people have is that the old sitemap file is actually deleted before the new sitemap file is generated. As we didn't address any of that at all, so that issue would still exist for us. Leo,
I don't think so, because as simple XML sitemap works, there's a controller in place that brings the sitemaps from the database. So there is no file, actually.